Your colleague Jane Hume today, Hollie, suggested that Philip Lowe should potentially stay on as Governor of the Reserve Bank. I suspect there are a lot of ordinary Australians would feel very differently about that at the moment.
Yeah, look, Jane, this is her background, this is the expertise that she has, and I don't have that background in finance, so I certainly wouldn't dare to tread on her toes with what she knows and understands. The personalities and the experiences and how it operates. But the Reserve Bank is not a place where any politics should be played on who the governor is. This is a very serious position that affects on us globally. I know that there is a lot of upset around Philip Lowe, saying to people the interest rates aren't going to, cash rates not going to increase.
Well, I think he's fundamentally failed on that point, hasn't he?
Yes, I think that's absolutely goes without saying, and I know there's a lot of anger and angst about that. But the reality is we have an inflation problem at the moment, and the only lever that the Reserve Bank has is interest rates. Now, they've put them on hold. The government has been politicising this position in the way that they've spoken about Philip Lowe. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if they're going to appoint him for a second term or whether they're going to look to change it. But we do need to be mindful. This is a position that is reflective of us on the world stage and not one to be played around with and to be politicised, because it could have a much, much broader effect on the whole Australian economy.
I mean, I know hindsight's 20/20, but the more you look at it, you got to think, heck, the federal government at the time of COVID was throwing shed loads of money at people, saying spend, spend, spend. At the same time, we drop interest rates to historic lows, and then we get inflation and we're surprised by it. Like, did we not see this coming?
It's terrible. I mean, a large part of, there are other international factors beyond our control, but a large part of it is this huge pressure cooker environment that federal and state governments put us in during lockdown. This created a situation in which people had heaps and heaps of money, particularly more well-off people, those who were struggling and often still had to work and were locked in tiny flats, not so lucky. But it basically was so incredibly advantageous to wealthier Australians who could just sit there, not spend the money on all the luxuries they normally would, like travel or going out or all these things. Suddenly, you lift the lid on that, and like any pressure cooker, the steam just goes ballistic. And this is the spending problem we're facing. And these people are going out and spending like drunken sailors. And that's great. And everyone's going out and spending like drunken sailors. But even
including the government.
And, well, not so much. I mean...
185 billion.
Well, half the time people are complaining that there's not enough spending by the government for Middle Australia, and half the time the same people are saying the government's spending too much.
But the 185 billion, they're not spending it on Middle Australia. They're spending... This was a welfare budget that was delivered.
They're spending it on the poorest people who can least afford it.
Well,
that's right.
But
So
the thing is,
you're saying they should spend more.
No,
but also
I'm not.
They're spending too much.
I'm not saying they should spend more at all. But the budget, what those cost of living changes they put in that are going to people that are on welfare payments, these are the people that will spend that money, increase spending.
Yes,
but the Reserve Bank's trying to put the brake on with inflation, and that yet the government's out there putting $185 billion more into the economy.
These are people who literally cannot survive the cost of living crisis. Now,
it's not just people on welfare. I can tell you there are people with mortgages who are very close to not surviving.
Yes, I know, but there are people. There are literally some of those people are going to organisations like Vinnie's, like the Salvos, for the very first time. I've seen it going to Centrelink for the first time. These are all stories I've heard just this week alone, let alone in the weeks and months leading up to it. Now, if you're saying that, now,
they said 50% of the people they're now seeing coming to them have jobs.
That's exactly right. The anecdotal evidence I am hearing is just from people who run these organisations is just staggering. Now, if you are saying that the government shouldn't spend too much money, but only has to spend a bit, but it shouldn't spend money on these people and should instead spend money on people who are still just...
Well, they want to borrow $10 billion for a housing fund that's not going to build a house.
Which is it? You're saying they need to provide...
that.
Do they have to provide more relief? Or do they have to...
You know where a housing fund should come from? State governments releasing more land so you can actually develop things. Instead, we've got a federal government saying, let's borrow $10 billion.
What an extraordinary idea.
I understand.
Chris is literally saying that.
Well, he's about the only bloke who's saying it.
Now he's the only one.
Well, it is a state government issue, housing, for a start. But you know what? I understand there's a bowling club in Mossman that might be open to some redevelopment. Now, I think we might be able to put a nice 20-foot story high.
Right up in front of those
affordable
NIMBYs.
Housing.
Yep.
I think it should be affordable housing right in Mossman.
And we'll see how the residents like it then.
We'll put the bowling club right on the top. We might even manage to put a nightclub in the middle floor or something. I don't know.
We'll all be there.
I understand there's some land we can develop there for affordable housing.
The aged care residents will be boogieing away on the dance floor.
Oh, yeah, they love it.
Exercise.
And I'm sure the good residents of Mossman and Moringa are very supportive of affordable aged care as well.
Well, I'm sure Zali's right in on it.
That's right.
We'll all be there. We'll all be there for the opening.